what's going on, everybody? All right. Had some audio issues, and so let's see if this is working. I'm going to check the YouTube channel. Music's playing, that's okay. But of course, right before the show started, my USB interface got unplugged from some monkeying around that I was doing. So let's have a listen. Okay, so I'm there. Let me know if you guys can hear me all right. I see myself on my phone, so that's good news. What's happening, everybody? Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for coming along for the ride today, and for all of you out there in the interwebs, we're trying to just kind of get started. It seems to be quite an issue now today, of course. Of like all days, it never goes as planned, and so my kids had a program at their school this morning, and so I went to that, and then as I was pulling away from the school, I got a phone call from his teacher saying, "Oh, your son says he's sick." And so I had to go back and get him, and so he's here today. He's not sick. He's totally perfectly fine. So as soon as we got home, he said, "I'm feeling much better now." So cool. Anyway, so he's here. He's not in my office this time. He's in his room. But we might get interrupted by him, who knows? So we shall see. Fun times. So yeah, all good. We're trying to keep this going here, so I can hear you all right. Excellent, thank you. Hey, good morning. What's going on, Angus? I have a meeting in a couple of minutes, so I might actually not be here for the actual show. If I miss it, have a great day. Cheers, you too, man. I'm almost done my coffee, so it's running out, if you will, but all good. Appreciate you hanging out with me as much as you can. Thanks for coming along. Now, I am just streaming straight to YouTube today. Don't worry, Angus, I'll take notes. I don't know if there'll be anything worthy of note-taking on this venue. But I am going to talk about some of the stuff that I'm up to right now and the tools that I'm using to achieve those things. And so if you're watching this in post, that's what today's is going to be about. Basically, how, what it is that I'm doing, and what tools I'm using to get those jobs done. So, good times. Thanks for coming along, and throw yourself in the chat if you have a chance to let me know that you're out there. I don't know why that just posted that again. It's probably because I have it here as automatic. Oh, that's fun. Maybe I'll do this and just say queued entries only. That's why I need a moderator. All right, anyways. So what is it that I'm up to? Well, really, now my job is to help facilitate an online community that meets, that physically does their recording in Tennessee, which is why I travel so much. Travel down there a couple times a month, and I spend the weekend with them and try and get them up and running and get things a little bit more what's the right word, like their workflows, tighten those up a bit. And so they were already off to a great start before we began working with them at all. They were doing lots of stuff that was really good. I mean, you know, they had a strong following online and everything. So really my goal was just to facilitate doing more of that and trying to grow it kind of to the next level, because many of them have, they did this out of necessity. What the story goes that the minister who runs it was let go of a congregation that he was working for because he was preaching too much grace, basically. And that's a long story for another day that I'll let him tell one time. But he left that congregation, and he was getting a lot of messages online saying, please continue to teach. And so he just turned on his phone and sent it to YouTube and just was putting up lessons. Well, then it turned out that he wanted to keep doing this and was getting some support from some folks that kind of were helping him out in a rough time, and decided, okay, I'll do this weekly. And so that evolved into having an actual lesson every week, and then that evolved into kind of a small service every week, and then he was doing other sort of like Bible classes and things like that. So all good. Well, it's gotten to the point where they need some help and they need some resiliency. One of the main functions that I serve is that I'm there a couple times a month in case the other main technician is not available. So I'm down there. I can run sound. I can, direct the show. I could do switching. I could run a camera, whatever it needs to be done. I kind of have my hand in all of those facets. So with that comes some organization and getting us to use the correct production tools and that sort of thing. So the first thing is that we were cutting the show with an ATEM Mini, and that was new for me. I hadn't used one of those before, but it was basically it was an HDMI ATEM Mini from Blackmagic, and that was fine. It served that function just fine. Other than we were already out of inputs because we had two PTZ cameras and we had one Canon camera, and it wasn't a Bird Dog PTZ, by the way, but we had one Canon camera that they had kind of started using right when I showed up early last year. So we were bringing all of those things back and then converting them with Blackmagic SDI to HDMI converters and then sending them into the ATEM and then just cutting the show with the ATEM, which was fine. They primarily were using one camera, and it was kind of a long shot, which is mostly what this show is. It was a long shot that was not really terribly dynamic. It's when they added the Canon that really gave them some depth of field, like they had the blurry background and all that sort of thing that really made the shot look good. And so we actually ended up buying a second one fairly quickly so we could have two shots, because we find that the viewership of our service is primarily when the lead minister is actually teaching. And so that's what we focus on. That's where we put our time and our effort. And it's not that we haven't tried those other elements, but they just, for the online community, doesn't really serve the same purpose that like a in-seat church would. And so you kind of figure out, thanks to YouTube analytics, when people are really tuning in and when they're not, right? So we've been using that to our advantage. We've been kind of using those stats and making some changes based on that. So one of we ended up getting a couple of these Canons and then getting them back to the ATEM Mini, and quickly ran out of inputs so that we could bring this audio in. And so I made a recommendation that, like, okay, well, if we're going to go to doing this real-time production thing, then we probably should get something with more inputs. And after much discussion, they really actually quite like the Blackmagic product. And quite frankly, I don't detect any major problems with it as a video switcher. So we went with a Constellation ME2, which is a real behemoth when it comes to what it is that they had. And obviously the next version of that is the ME4. Is it ME4? Anyways, the next upgrade to that, there's still room to go upwards, but I don't foresee us needing that in the near future, in the next couple of years. And so I'm thinking 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years. That's kind of my scan as to what I'm thinking. Now in 5 years, perhaps, maybe in 2 years, perhaps we might need more inputs. But right now we need to do more with our actual cameras themselves. And I'll talk about that in a minute if it interests anybody at all. I'm going to switch this over to my main screen real quick. So, and thanks for coming along for the ride, folks. Feel free to throw your name in the chat. Just let me know that you're there. So we have been, we moved to a Constellation ME2. We have these two Canons that get basically SDI out, converted HDMI to SDI now, and then SDI home run back to the ATEM. And then we're still using those PTZs. They're Sony's. And they're okay. They're Sony lenses, but they really lack kind of the high detail, Now, I'm a high contrast type of camera guy. Like, I don't like a flat shot. I like quite a dark, contrasty shot, but that's just my own personal preference. And if you followed me through my Bird Dog ages, you would know that that's the look that I go with. But that's primarily just because it's my preference. It's not that it's better or worse. It's just that that's what I want to use. So, the Canons can do that. Now, we don't necessarily do high contrast because there are multiple guys setting up that shot. So we do a little bit more flat than I would typically do, but that's fine. And but those Sony PTZs are just regular Sony PTZs. They don't really have, they're kind of entry level. They don't really have that sort of depth or sophistication that the Canon cameras do. So the next question is, well, what do we do about that, right? Like, do we swap them out now for something better. Like what's next down the road, and so I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So we started using a Constellation ME2, which is primarily an interface, but it's not a control surface, right? Where the A10 Mini is a legit control surface, that actual Constellation is, you're gonna have to figure out a different way to control it. Now, right out of the box, you can just log into the interface, and it has like a a web UI surface where you can just click through them there. But I pretty much immediately, because of my Bird Dog days, got them an X Keys 64, which is the 80 button X Keys that has some of them blacked out. But it's a little bit cheaper. It's just a little more than $200, and that works really well. And then, of course, Companion. So we already had a computer in the booth that was running the basically monitoring the stream. That was all it was doing, is watching YouTube during the service to see what the quality was going out to YouTube, and to monitor the chat and a few other things. Well, I loaded Companion on there, and we just started using, I programmed the whole thing. Now, it's weird programming in X Keys. They natively work, but it's weird because it shows a Stream Deck device, and you have to figure out the math as to which button is which, and there's no real way to like light up the key that you're working on until you program it. And so you have to select the key inside Companion, say feedback, and say like turn on light or something like that. And when you do that, then it will light up. Well, if there's 64 buttons, and remember, it's on the 80 button platform. So if you're familiar with X Keys at all, picture a large X Key device that has 80 buttons, right? I believe it's 8 rows of 10 or something like that. Anyways, maybe not. Maybe it's, what is it? Is it 8 rows of 10? Anyways, whatever. It's a big device. Well, with 64, they've just made a design with the blank keys and just blacked them out. What I like about the 64, other than the lack of the buttons, like I probably should have just spent the money and got the 80, but what I like about the 64 is that it gives you sections on the board. So you can have like all of your inputs across the top, which we do. We do program and preview up top. And then we do lower thirds on the left-hand side, and we do cut and fade and everything on the right-hand side. We have a panic button on the left-hand side to throw up the logo. And then in the middle, we have our outputs. And so we can send specific things to the televisions that are in-house. We can send specific things to the YouTube feed, all that good stuff. So primarily we send the program. And again, that's a change that we made, and I can talk through some of that. But primarily we send the program out to everywhere, to all our destinations, with the exception of a couple of times. So that ATEM Constellation ME2 really made a big difference. And integrating X Keys with Companion was a big integration piece that I think really elevates our production team to be able to do things quickly and have everything at their fingertips. So it's a great little device, and it serves our purposes very well. I don't foresee us needing to go to a bigger X Keys until we max out our inputs on the X Keys device, and then we'll have to figure out what to do there. But for the most part, we're only using a handful of inputs now. I think the A10 Mini maxes out at 4, and if you wanted to do lower thirds like key and fill, then you're going to have to use 2 of those to do one objective, which is really annoying, but I understand how it's done. It's just really annoying. So we have to take the good with the bad. So yeah, we ended up using the Constellation, which is a great product. I haven't had any issues with it. No freezing, no dumping, no dropping frames, nothing like that. And then it spits out all SDI as well. So it has a whole bunch of inputs that are all SDI, and then it has a bunch of outputs that are all SDI. And you can program all of those individually if you want. So you can go to multi-viewers, or you can go to program, or you can go to preview, or you can go to whatever. So if you have lots of screens in your studio, you can SDI all of those out. Now, a lot of screens don't have SDI, right? So that's an issue, because what do you buy for your studio? Do you get a bunch of those Blackmagic screens or what? And then you got to mount them and, whatever. So you still need to kind of convert back to HDMI in many cases. I haven't really found a competitive SDI monitor that's not multiple hundreds of dollars that I could buy en masse and put everywhere. But it would be amazing to have that output going to like where my team that's using ProPresenter is, and where I want multi-viewers. I want to have multiple multi-viewers inside the control booth. We're not there yet, but we will eventually probably cross that road one day. But if anybody has any SDI monitor suggestions, I'm all ears. I just really don't want to pay multiple hundreds of dollars. 100, 200, somewhere in there is fine. But beyond that, it gets kind of like, well, I could just easily convert to HDMI and get it out that way, because timing is not of the essence at that point. And we have a bunch of those inexpensive Blackmagic SDI to HDMI boxes. And so, whatever. We don't really need it. And that's where it comes to like, well, it would be nice to have everything the same, but it's simple to do it elsewhere. And I could buy a $50 Dell monitor or Acer monitor or something with a high refresh rate for under $100 and convert it to HDMI again for probably less than $100 and get away with $150 maybe for a monitor, for an actual monitoring system. So I find that is better for me, but whatever. So we have a bunch of options, and we've gotten into a better place. The Blackmagic Micro SDI to HDMI Velcroed to the back, powered by USB from the TV. Very nice. Yes, that's a good idea. Ooh, Velcroed to the TV. Ooh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I might end up doing that a lot. What's going on, NetHab? Hopefully you're doing well. So we want to obviously continually make better improvements. Now, one of the things that I'm super excited about, and I've done a lot here in the past year, so I'm kind of trying to recap a bunch of that. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is the yeah, yikes. It just like all kind of, I'm like monitoring things in 3 different places and everything. Okay. So one of the things I'm really excited about is getting the whole production crew on the same wavelength. The group that runs basically our lower thirds and all of our video. So to give you an idea, maybe I should back up a little bit. To give you an idea as to how this actually works is the church is basically a video, like an online service. Okay. And what they do is they take in video submissions from people around the world and they integrate those into a short service. It's like 50 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there. And so it's not super lengthy. The majority of it is the teaching time, and that's traditionally done live. However, because we're strictly online, for the most part, there are a few people at the soundstage, and it is a soundstage, by the way, but because there are a few people, there are only a few people on the soundstage itself, we have the luxury of doing everything remote, or doing everything live, or doing a mix, like a hybrid service, or doing everything pre-recorded. And so the idea is that you never really skip a beat. You never really miss a service, because you can make them in advance if you really had to, which is one of the things that we do. So, for example, if the executive minister or the whatever, any of the ministers are going to be out of town, we can just pre-record that service and get it ready and post it. Now, we are using Resi for that, and that has been quite a journey. One day, Jeremy Klusterman will appear on this channel again, and we'll be able to talk to him a little bit about that. But we are using Resi, and it, again, pros and cons, just like everything, just like using NDI or using Resi or using vMix or using Wirecat. They all have their pros and cons. And so Resi is pretty good. I like the scheduling function of Resi, because you can upload a video and then you can schedule it to go live, and then it just goes off when it's time. And it's very consistent. It's all cloud-based, and so it's very consistent. We don't have too many issues with it, except, of course, there's always a but. Except that Resi only permits certain types of files to be uploaded to your library. And so it has to be encoded a certain way, has to have certain keyframes, it has to be very specific. And when we originally did the first video and we uploaded it, it said this is the wrong format, it needs to be this way. And so we reformatted it, I re-rendered it, the whole service. I recorded the service, but the whole service took, it takes an hour to do that, and then the rendering takes another 45 minutes. And so we re-rendered the service and then tried to upload it again. It said, oh, now your keyframes are wrong. And I kind of wish that Resi was more like YouTube, where pretty much I could put anything up there if I wanted to, and it would pretty much do it for me and render it. If it processed and took a little longer, whatever, because I'm going to upload it on Thursday or Friday, and so it's going to have 2 days to render it before it needs to be pushed live. But what I do like is once you do figure it out, and we did eventually figure it out. I don't like how specific it is. But once we did figure it out, then it went off without an issue, and it just started when we started just started the recording, just like you would watch a video. And it showed up on our YouTube page as a live service. And so that was really cool to kind of watch that happen in real time. Now, like I said, Resi's not a perfect solution, but it certainly serves our purposes for what we need to do. And there is some resiliency built into it. And so we can have fluctuating, internet speeds where we're at, which we don't normally, but if we did, it would still build in. There's still basically like a 30-second buffer between Resi and then another 2 minutes between Resi and YouTube. So there's a fairly big buffer when it comes to what's being done live and what's not. And if we have any major issues, which we haven't, there's like a resiliency piece where it loads it into the Resi encoder, and if it drops between the encoder and the cloud service, it has it all built in, so it has that kind of buffer that we can use. So that is great because we rarely drop a frame. We rarely have any issues going out to YouTube where things are not working correctly. So that's been great. I mean, it's been an interesting lesson in how we do video. So I'm just going to point my microphone a little closer to me. How we actually do live video, especially in a place where it has to go off every week. Now, there are various emphasis on whether or not it goes off perfectly, right? Like you want it to go off perfectly, but whether it is perfect, I think people give more grace, which I certainly have had the luxury of over my bird dog days, and now here had the luxury of people understanding that we're people and we're trying to just do something live. And I think that there is an element of, I think part of the reason why people tune in to live things that are unscripted, and again, kudos to many of you who traveled with me during the Bird Dog John days, that like I would do things live and not have prepped for them. And it's not because I didn't want to prep for them. It was because I wanted to see it and experience it live on my own. Like I didn't want to, I really detest those shows that have everything planned and prepackaged and perfectly, every button they click, they've already tested 60 times and they know exactly what's going to happen and they know exactly how it's going to go. And quite frankly, I want to run headlong into it and find out what breaks. And that was saying something from a head of support guy at a company that was inventing stuff, because stuff broke regularly. Not just my own gear, but like when I did things in vMix or Wirecast or OBS or whatever, like it served though that it was a genuine experience. And so I think people give you the liberty of that experience. I'm going to take these off. And I think they would give you the liberty of that experience without too much criticism, because they're doing it real too. Like when people tune in and watch me walk through vMix and stuff and fumble through it, quite frankly, they're also doing that. And so there's some relatability there as to like, oh, John doesn't know that button fixes this issue that he's trying to work on, and you throw it in the chat. Well, that's extremely helpful to me, but also to a lot of people that are paying attention and listening. So there's, like I said, I think we got to be careful with real-time production, that it's got to be absolutely perfect. And the caveat to this is you watch big time, like the Grammys, you watch something like that, which I did not watch the Grammys, but I saw some behind the scenes tech footage. Of course I did. And they showed all the inputs and they showed how they're switching it. And like, it's not without its flaws. They don't cut to the wrong, like sometimes they cut to the wrong camera, not everything is played out because they have to adapt to what's happening in real life. And I think that gives an authentic feel to, these are not actors. Many of those are actors, but many of them are not actors. This is happening in real time and we're trying to cover it as best we can. So I like that about what it is that I do. And I think, although I would love to have it all planned out, and granted the group that I work with would love to have it all exactly perfect, people understand that it's not exactly perfect, right? So that's, one of the trade-offs that I think we have to completely expect. I got a note here. So now tell us how you really feel about bands on a click and cue scripted down to the beat. Well, yeah, there's something to be said about that. I mean, if you were going to be, if you were going to charge people admission and like tickets for something, maybe you want to have it scripted. Maybe you want to be on cue. Like when we hit the chorus, we're going to go to these shots, or when we, have we go to the bridge, we're going to want to be sure that we're up close and personal to the guy that's playing the or he's ad libbing over this piece on the piano, or I don't know. Like you may want to plan some of that out, but the authenticity of the experience of it being live, like here's the great contrast, right? If you were to attend a concert and then to watch it again on YouTube, are those experiences not the same, but do they portray the same atmosphere in both of them? And you're immediately probably going to say, well, no, because being there is part of the experience. It's absolutely true, but like I know a lot of places, for example, that will record live music, like record a concert or something like that, and then dub over the lead vocals and the background vocals, and basically make it look like it was live, but be picture perfect. And it's very common in the Christian world to do that, to have a live concert and then to redo all of the lead vocals and to clean them up. And so many live recordings are not live recordings. And I guess if you're going to sell it and you're charging for admission and all of that stuff, like I get that. But if you're going to have the live experience, and again, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and correct me if you think differently than this, because it's not even a correction. It's just give me your 2 cents. My thought on this is people are going to the live show because there's a chance that it will screw up, but there's a greater chance that they'll see something authentic and like pure and something performed perfectly. You know what I mean? And that instills a sense of like awe and wonder, but also like a high level of respect that you can. It's like sports players; they can perform under pressure, right? Or they can't. And that's a very common narrative in my allegiance to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's like they play really well all season long, and then the playoffs come and they're out in the first 2 rounds. It's like, well, that was all well and good, but when pressure comes, it's time to perform. And if you can't perform, then guess what? It doesn't really, the great season you had doesn't really mean a whole lot other than you qualified to try and play when the pressure's on. So I think there's a lot of people that attend live shows and streams and stuff like that because it's not scripted. I remember when Bird Dog was doing webinars and we were announcing something, PF120 or something like that. And we were going to do a webinar on WebEx. And there was no interaction. There was no planned interaction with the audience. It was basically tune in and we're going to give a presentation. That is very different than being a part of a launch where everybody's chatting about it and you're interacting with that and you're bringing it in on like social media and stuff like that. Because even something like this, where I can bring in your live comments and read them on air and respond to you in real time. I mean, there's a sense of like what I typed appears in the show, right? Like it appears like here. It becomes a problem when you have 4 back-to-back services due to seating and parking restrictions. Fair enough. Yeah, I think though that, and now that I'm thinking in more like contrasty levels, I genuinely think that people are looking for places to belong. That was one of the fun things about what I used to do with Bird Dog at the support show was there are very few outlets for people who are doing NDI on their own to talk about it and to like interact with other people who were doing that. And so that was the like niche market that I had, where it wasn't going to be a huge audience ever, but people would show up every single week and participate. Many of you would show up every single week and participate. And that was just the way that it went. And I think it was because people were trying to find not necessarily like a community to belong, but just like other people that are similar to what I'm trying to do, and I can learn from you, and John's going to learn from them, and I'm going to watch John make mistakes and not make those mistakes myself, and that sort of stuff. I think that that really gives people a sense of that you're not alone in trying to do all of this, and that there was opportunity to ask and receive answers. So I think we're trying to really take that seriously where it is that I'm working, because one of the main teacher said, I'd love to be able to see the chat and interact with people in that way. And so if people are checking in, I'd love to see that while I'm on stage, that they've checked in, and I can kind of, give them feedback. And I wonder if that's not a time or a segment where we could do that, where it's like almost like a live Q&A or something like that. Now I found a program. I found a website. Let's see if I have it here. What was it called? Oh, it's not open anymore. It's called well, let me look at my history, because I don't know if anybody's seen this. History. Let's look at my history. I had it open yesterday. Yesterday. Here we go. Slido. Have you ever heard of Slido? It looks like this. Oops. Doesn't look like that. It looks like it looks like this. And Slido is basically a way that you can interact with your audience by providing a QR code they can scan with their phone and then answer questions. So you can take polls, you can ask questions and get answers. And then in addition to that, depending on the version of this that you have, you can upvote questions. And so then when it's time to do the Q&A, you can take the top 5 questions that people have upvoted, because they all have similar feelings, and you can kind of go and just go through that given what time restraints that you have. So I like that idea. I think that that's a really cool potential for interaction. And then you could put this information up on the screen so you can interact with it, or you can just get it on an iPad and have it in front of them. And that would seem to work pretty well. But Slido is something that I kind of came across it. So one of the keynotes that I was listening to mentioned it, and I thought, oh, that's cool that it has that sort of that's its function. Now none of these I am using. However, we are integrated with YouTube. What other integration options do they have? Because we're not using WebEx. Embed Slido. So perhaps you could embed it on the website. That might be the best way to manage that, is to get it on there and then on the website, and just say, go to the website. That's where the questions will be. And then if you embed it, then it maybe shows up. Yeah, that's a cool idea. So I would be interested. Hey, what's going on? I guess welcome back. So that might be an interesting way to do that, and provide an actual, like when we're live, you provide the questions underneath. A lot of my clients have been using, Menti lately. It seems to work fairly well, though I haven't really handled the back end side of it at all. So the other problem with these sorts of things is that they require somebody to really manage it and to be invested in it, which means that if you're operating in a church community, then you're bringing like moderators on, but and volunteers, not just moderators, but like volunteers. They have to kind of commit to it several times a month, and that can get monotonous. But I still think it's important. Like I still think that needs to that needs to happen. Now this integration with Slido seems to work, and I'll check out Menti here, because I haven't ever heard of that either. It needs the professional plan, which makes me a little bit nervous, because it's like, well, what, how much is that? Because like all things, money is not necessarily just without. Money is always going to be a consideration. So professional is $75 a month. That's $900 annually. Why choose professional? No surprises during meetings. You have full control over who can enter your meeting and which questions will be displayed live. It's made for teams and professional events. The professional plan is ideal for internal comms, team leaders, project managers, events. What can you do with professional? Filter irrelevant questions. Keep your Q&A clear. So yeah, you can have reviewed questions, which is where the moderator comes from, right? I wonder if that format of let me just check my okay. Am I back? Yes, I'm back. Okay. So did this actually? Yes, it does. Okay, perfect. That button is working. So I've already finished my coffee. Well, oof, that's not finished, but all right. This is going to be cold. I made some coffee upgrades in my house yesterday. Oh gosh, that's very cool. Oh. All right. So yeah, Slido might be an option for like taking because we're online, right? And so we like to ask questions to our audience and have them do like a Q&A at the end. But yeah, it would be very interesting. Yeah, it'd be very interesting. Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I haven't thought that through very much, but we'll try and figure that out. I will look up Menti and see what Menti interactive present Mentimeter, is that what it's called? Menti interactive presentation software. Now you know what I this also reminds me of the reject. This also reminds me of not Prezzo. Prezi, no, not Prezi. There's another program that was like this where you could take polls. You could ask questions to your class essentially, and then they just go to the app and they hit the button and off it goes. But for your work, for education, what other integrations do we have? Presentations. Prezi? Hard pass on Prezi. Why hard pass on Prezi? I don't know if it was Prezi or not. I remember using Prezi in college to do presentations for school, engaging with your audiences, but I haven't used Prezi in a very long time. And Prezi for Zoom, Prezi marketing, sales, teachers, resources, product tutorials. Tell me more about why you would pass on Prezi, because that's an interesting statement to me. It was pretty good when I used it, and maybe it's evolved into not being very usable. And honestly, what I really want is interaction with the audience. I'm not looking to make presentations. I just need interaction. And so I want to have a ability to, well, anyways, yeah, I want to have the ability to interact in a real sense to them. Now, I've opened up vMix here real quick. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm trying to just change this real quick. Reload, transition out and in this one. Okay, so yoink and overlay delay. The delay is a little bit long on the words, so we're gonna edit, and that's good now. Prezi just feels like needless flashiness, is what Angus said. Fair enough. If it feels that way. Probably. It's probably a little too much than for what like all of us need, right? Anyways, this is just one rabbit hole that I wanted to go down, but we're considering how to interact with the audience in real time to try and have more engagement during the sessions. The issue though is, what do you ask? Like, do you have a preset of questions? Do you take a poll? Do you whatever? So we'll be discussing that probably at the next planning meeting, but all good. But yeah, I would love to do something where I could like integrate questions or put them on our website. We have an app, but it's one of those boxed apps, and so I really don't find it super valuable. Primarily because every link just takes us to the website. So why don't we just telling people just go to our website? You don't need an app on your phone. Just save the website in your phone or something like that. But yeah, it doesn't work great with that. So I don't really care, but I don't really care for the app. It's been years since I've run into it. I guess I'm biased because I spent so much time having to manually insert slides for edited recording. Fair enough. I I did the same. It's much easier now with ISO recording being more commonly available. Right. Yeah, and that might be something. Has anybody had any experience with the Black Magic Hyperdeck? You know what I mean? The Black Magic Hyperdeck. That I'm tempted to put on my radar as something I'm probably going to end up buying. Black Magic Hyperdeck. I want one of the chassis built ones. So B&H, looks like B&H have hyperdecks. Let's just go. I'd rather look at actually B&H's website for this because I want to see price and everything. But has anybody had any experience with them? And then if they have, what is your overall impression? Because the top seller is on B&H's website is the HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro. And is that 2 hard drives? Is that what that is? But this, if we're gonna, like, right now we have a backup for our recording at the soundstage with a just a 4K, like Blackmagic 4K, what are they called, Studio or something like that? They're just the little screens that has a little SD card in it. And I'd love to do this more seriously where we have an actual stream that's going here. But I don't know if we need it just yet, but I'd love to have it as a legit backup. So when we're running, I've used various HyperDecks for the last decade. And what are your thoughts? I mean, I'd be interested to know how that has worked for you. But yeah, I don't have any experience other than using the little studio, that I'm just gonna load these and see how this works on always been careful about drive compatibility. Hyperdecks have always been good and solid. Okay, that did not fire the rest of these. Why didn't it do that? Hang on one second. Let me see. Queued entries only. Okay. The rack mount units are pretty solid. Make sure that yours are that your SSDs are compatible. HyperDeck is just as particular about file format as Resi is. Oh, really? Interesting. Why is that? I mean, we're coming out of a Blackmagic constellation, so we should be good. SDIN, right? A friend of mine runs Blackmagic Video Assists. That's what they're called, Video Assists, and he loves it, but he usually runs a backup on a HyperDeck. I suspect that's what I'm probably going to end up having to do. You should check out the Atmos Shogun Studio 2. Well, we can definitely do that. So if I go B&H again, was Atmos at ISE? Does anybody know? Shogun Studio 2. Whoa. That's a big boy right there. 3 U's. That's probably what you were referring to, right? Oh, Broadfield's website. Look at that. Good golly. That is pretty. Is this actually a... How do you mount this thing? Where is the mounting hardware? Can somebody show me a picture? Whoa, hey, oh, Bird Dog Mini. Yeah, I'd be interested to know how that thing gets mounted. The only time I've ever had to do a show for free, it was because I trusted an Atmos recorder. Oh dear, that's oh there you go. There's the mount, the double take. So it's $3,000, and HDR dual monitor, 8 channels, HDP 60, or 2 channels at 4K. 8 channels, my goodness. HDR dual monitors, 2 channels, 8 channels, rack mountable, record in multiple formats. I mean, it's very, very pretty. Audios, channel in, 1 and 2, video, recording channel 2. It'll record 8 HD channels with scopes and dual drives. That is pretty slick, man. I mean, for $3,000, it's probably overkill. I'd love to have a desk like this where I could drop in stuff, like use like that, but we're not there yet. One day. But we're not quite there yet. Anybody know if Atmos was at ISE? I guess I could just Google it, but I'm wondering if they were there. But anyways, I was just thinking something like this, something simple that would accept, that would accept SDI in, and then it has an output, but we wouldn't need that. But you could go SDI in from one of the channels, and and you can link the hyperdecks too, right? You can link them to the constellation. So what's the story with that sort of integration? Is it like linking hyperdeck to constellation ME2? What's the benefits? Connecting this hyperdeck to switcher. Having some trouble connecting these. To explain my setup, blah, 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 blah. Update. I've managed to connect the hyperdeck, but on the panel it shows as having no disk, even when the SD card is inserted. I've tried this with an older hyperdeck, and that works fine, but the SD card, well, the hyperdeck is connected to a switcher via 2 SDIs, one from the switching program, one from a hyperdeck SDI in, and the one from the hyperdeck SDI out to the switcher camera input, as Blackmagic suggests. I've checked my network settings to ensure that the hyperdeck is the unique static IP address within the overall network environment, but it still doesn't show up as an ATEM control interface. So each hyperdeck is $1,500. So for twice the price, you can get 4 times the recording. And then you can link the hyperdeck. Linking the hyperdeck is for playback. Oh, so if you're doing like instant replay with the hyperdeck, because I wouldn't need that necessarily, but I would love to just have an integrated recording system. That's, I think, why, although you're saying for twice the price you can get 4 times the recording power, unless I wanted to record all the inputs separately for some reason, but I don't think I would need that. I don't know. I'm not too sure I would need that. But yeah, we can see what we can do. Oh, thanks, Nightbot. Okay, so connecting an ATEM switcher. Connect your hyperdeck the same way you would blah 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 blah. But oh, I guess you could control in Companion, right? So if I open Companion, and let's just launch that real quick. I'm going to cut this over. If I say Blackmagic hyperdeck record, so I could program this onto the X keys. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to put a hyperdeck then on my potential next steps list, which I don't even really have, but we'll get that started. Because I think that that would be very useful. Hyperdeck. This one is $1,000, but it's just the Studio Pro HD. Why? I'm not planning on going to 4K anytime soon. So maybe as like an entry level that we just go that way. Yeah. For $1,000 I could probably get that approved too. But we'll see. Be a better integration for recording, for local recording. And then we use the little, oh, what did you call it? Where was it here? The video assist. We use that for just monitoring the output for color correction's sake. But we don't really use it. We don't really use it for that. We should use it more, but we don't. We don't reference it as the go-to because we've color balanced one of the multi-viewer inside the studio to do that part. So, all right. So I really got off on a tangent here about a bunch of things, including integration. But the piece that I really want to drive here is we're using a Blackmagic ATEM, and I'll do another show on some of this stuff as we go into some of that. But we do run an ATEM, and we run a X-Keys device. We're running ProPresenter 7, 7.15, I think, maybe 1.4. They just came out with an update. I'm a little nervous to do it, as one would be. And then they, the X-Keys integration. Now, I also integrated Companion with ProPresenter 7, which allows us to have a small 8-button X-Keys device. It doesn't have that satisfying click that the 24 and the 8064 device does. It's more of a hard press. It's weird. It just doesn't have that like satisfying click. But the X-Keys device that I have over at the ProPresenter does like next slide, previous slide. It does all the clear functions for ProPresenter 7. And I have an error button, which power cycles the connection between ProPresenter 7 and Companion. When the light turns on the error button, that means there is an error or a warning, and you can cycle it off and cycle it back on. I have, like a good integration guy, gone into the network and reserved the IP addresses inside the actual DHCP, and that means all of my devices operate in DHCP mode, but they'll always be assigned the same IP address, and so it's better than static. I still believe this. It's better than static because all my devices behave and think that they're being assigned a dynamic address, but I'm dictating which MAC addresses get which IP addresses, and that seems to work really well across the entire integration. So I'm really happy with that. I'd like to do have a better network in there, like a 4250, but that's not really required right now for this. For playing back clips, like you already do with ProPresenter, ATEM will show you the files on the disk and play them back when you take that source to program. Oh, interesting. ISO recording is a thing. I'd recommend getting 2 HyperDeck Pluses racked side by side. They are advertised as HD, but will do 4K 30. Oh, interesting. Really? Hang on. Say that again? No, you don't have to type it again. The HyperDeck Pluses will do 4K 30? Are you serious? Are they HyperDeck Pluses or HyperDeck Pros? HD HyperDeck Pro. Professional ISO recording, traditional broadcast. Specs. Let's go here real quick and just take a look. Oh my goodness, it does 2K. 4K, look at this. That's so cool. That's all we would do is 30. Interesting. I'm actually kind of tempted to build a little 2U rack with a pair of Studio HD Pro units. This is the way. We've standardized on a 16U rack configuration with a ATEM 2ME, 3-time web presenter, HyperDeck, audio embedder, and a pair of BirdDog quads, 4 in, 4 out for NDI. The half racks plus. The half rack plus. Okay. Half rack plus. Black Magic HyperDeck plus. And these are rack mountable. Studio HD plus. Up to 30 frames. Yeah. That's cool. Great for primary and backup. So here's an interesting thing. Like when we're streaming out, we're going out of the ATEM into a Resi encoder and Resi's going up, right? So we're recording it online in Resi. We're recording it also locally on the Resi encoder. Then it's being sent to YouTube and Vimeo and a bunch of other platforms and being recorded there as well. So we have several recordings of the actual live thing. If it ever goes down, you know, wherever in the chain, so if YouTube breaks or Facebook breaks or whatever, we've got it locally and we can upload it later. If Resi breaks, the online service, we have it locally recorded on the Resi encoder. And then if the Resi encoder breaks, we have it locally recorded on a Video Assist. And so we have several things. The problem is that they're all kind of manually started. It's kind of annoying that way. So I would love to get it where it's integrated. And this is a great idea. I'm going to put this on my shopping list too, and a bunch of SD cards. But I would love to use the Video Assist just to like mount it on a camera. Where is do we get an accessory here for this? Is there a rack mount option for this thing? Power, recording media, controller cables, headphones, required power cables. Yeah, is there an option to mount this to a rack? That's what I want. I want to be able to put it in the rack and not touch it and not like have to worry about it. I would rather that than anything, but 2 of their universal shelves. Ah, there we go. Black Magic universal shelf. Okay. Let's just take a quick look at this. All right, I'm hearing a little knock at the door, so give me just 1 sec. Okay, sorry. Had to give my son approval to go and get his lunch. Ooh, this does not have great reviews. No mounting holes. No mounting holes in the HyperDeck HD Plus. Uh-oh. 1 mounting hole for the HD Plus. It needs another hole for the second mounting point. This is a major oversight. I bought this for the HyperDeck Plus. Uh-oh, what's going on here, guys? It's a shelf. It does exactly what the package says. Mounting any Blackmagic half or third units. Blanking panels are provided to cover any unused space. There's just one glaring flaw. The screws provided to attach the device to the shelf have to be the rare posi drive head, which unnecessarily complicates the mounting process. Well, I mean, any rack mounter worth its salt has them laying around, so come on now. All right, so interesting. I will add that to my list here because I do like that. However, Blackmagic Plus, there are 2 versions. Of the gray one didn't have the holes. The black one does. Interesting. All right, so now we're over on the legendary Amazon. So tell me though, like what's the difference here between this unit and the HD Pro? Would the HD Pro save to both? Because I mean, we're just in a rack mount, unless I guess the power goes down on this one, right? So you'd have redundant power built into the same rack, and it's a little bit more expensive. It's probably $1,400, but you have two. Yeah, let me think. I mean, I guess. I mean, it's just as versatile. Interesting. I have to think about that. But I'm definitely going to need to put that on my list. So, cool. All right. Well, that's very helpful. Let me look at this again. It says HD, but it does up to 4K. So why doesn't it? Why did they change the name? Whoa, what is that thing? That's interesting. Video outputs, 2 SDI outputs supporting 1080p 60, and a loop through sends the input downstream to monitor switches and other devices. Man, this is an SD card only, but both can only record to one disk or a card at a time. Ah, so for redundancy's sake, you would do two. Very interesting. Okay, that's helpful. And I think that would be in tune with the way that this place runs, is that they'd want redundancy on redundancy. They've got redundant power, they've got redundant everything. I really want to get this into the rack and not, and like just press the record button on the X keys. Yeah, that would be ideal. All right. Well, this has been really helpful. That's a Constellation switcher. What is? This one? This isn't a Constellation. That's a Studio HD Pro. Right? Comes with these hard drives. You have hard drives, but you also have SD cards for this. It's useful. Feature rich. But yes, if you can only record it to one at a time, then it would make more sense to get two of these, and run them side by side, and have independent outputs from the ATEM Constellation go to that, and then just do redundant recordings. Have 4 SD cards and just do redundant recordings. I think that works well. Okay, well, next week I'm going to talk about the stuff that I'm doing inside DaVinci, and that's one of my roles. Is I'm starting to do their social media stuff, and so you may have noticed on my YouTube page that that's what next week's topic is, and I'll talk about what I'm learning with that. It's been quite an education so far, but we'll talk about DaVinci, we'll talk about running in social media platforms and trying to like how that works. But if you have any tips, I'd also be very appreciative to you bringing those along, because I could really use some, that's for sure. So, oh, you said, hey, what's that? I see. Gotcha. Sorry about that. You can trigger the record remotely as long as the REM button is on the front. I can trigger it remotely? In what method? Meaning I can integrate it with an X keys, or I can... That's probably what you mean, right? As long as the REM button is pressed. I'll do some research on this later. Find out what's going on with that, because this would be great. I mean, it would be a great step for us and provide us some resiliency. Not that we use the recordings necessarily, but I mean, it would be great if we were doing a 2-camera shoot to record 1 camera to each, and then record the full thing, because we're going to get into that. So that's really helpful. Okay, well, I will now need to attend to my son, who claims to be sick but is not, and so he'll be back at school tomorrow, and I'll have one normal day this week. But until then, take care of yourselves, everybody. Thanks for coming along. It's been quite the ride, but yes, you can trigger it remotely directly over the network, including X keys. That is what I would want. So we'd definitely be getting that going. So yeah, have a great week, everybody. Hopefully, looking forward to the weekend. This show seems to sneak up on me and then race by. So thanks for carrying the conversation, and I will be definitely looking into more of these items that we've spoken about today. But always a pleasure to have you along. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you guys in the next one, whenever that is. And whoops, that was my light. No, that was the wrong button. We will definitely see you guys in the next one as time permits. I plan to be back next week, so look me up. I will be going to Nashville next week. I just got back this week. I'll be going back again next week to do more of this, so and having more of these discussions. So I'll be doing this again next week, and this is my life now. So it's pretty fun, actually. I don't mind it at all, and that is all good for me. So take care of yourselves, guys. Appreciate you lots, and we will see you in the next one. All right, take it easy.